Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrei Shevchenko, and on behalf of the team of Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum, I want to thank all the journalists who tell the world about our fight for freedom. This time we will be talking about the church and the war, and our guest today is Heorhii Kovalenko, the priest of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, rector of the Open Orthodox University of Saint Sophia, the Wisdom. Father, I would like to ask my first question about how the church goes through the war. Glory to Jesus Christ, glory to Ukraine. The church lives through the war together with the people, because church is the people and Ukrainian church is Ukrainian people. The church is not a building, it's the people. We all pray together and we all keep working for the victory. We suffer from the war in the same way, but in the same way we fight for freedom. Father, what changed in everyday practices? Maybe there are some matters which are being paid more attention. Well, what changed, I think that the composition of our parishes, a part of the people left, and those are mostly women and children, and there are special services in church, the chaplain services for the refugees. We pray for those who left. Our parishes were added, were complemented by the internally displaced people from other regions. There are less children in our temples, and there are more military in our temples now. Obviously, difficult and important service is the condolences for the widows and the orphans. There are humanitarian services, the for the aid in the gray zones, the volunteer services, many parishes, and the priests, they take care of humanitarian affairs, the help to the support to the armed forces, and every day we pray for those whose lives were taken by the war, but we do it with the Easter sentiment, because the heroes don't die, and it's the same as Christ was resurrected. And about the Ukrainians who were forced to move outside Ukraine or inside Ukraine, who had to cut their ties with their parishes. Well, Greek Catholic parish has their connections all around the world. The Protestants have their brothers all over the world. As to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, we coordinate our activities with the Universal Patriarchate. So according to the Thomas, Ukrainian Church cannot establish the parishes abroad, but to cover our adherents, there is a special mission for special service when the priests live on a temporary basis for the execution of services. For example, I'm based in Kyiv, but I held a service for Ukrainian refugees in Italy on Christmas, and then I was in Lithuania, where we together with the Orthodox Lithuanians. They were, as they said, they cannot pray together with the Moscow Patriarchate, so we organized service for Ukrainian adherents in Vilnius and Klaipeda and Anykščiai. Those were the meetings of not only Ukrainians, there were Belarusians, there were Lithuanians, so those were special services, and they were different from the services in Ukraine. And we are being provided significant support by the veterans, the Catholics in Italy, in Lithuania. So it's the internal Christian cooperational process. For example, the Orthodox, they visit Sunday services with local communities, but for example, to confess, they want the Orthodox priests to come to us. So those are the missions that we fulfill. There is a special service organized in Kyiv metropolis, and we cooperate with Universal Patriarchate. The Orthodox are being serviced by the representatives of other local churches, Romanian churches, Greeks. It's a very big process which requires new forms, new shapes, requires new arrangements and new coordination. And it's one of those new types of services which emerged during the war. How does it look in practice? Does it mean that there is an active Ukrainian community emerging elsewhere and they're looking for a local church or a local community or other confessions which have goodwill for such cooperation? And well, there is a format that you mentioned, because Ukrainians usually organized near Ukrainian centers, near the embassies. There are communities created in schools because children attend schools, attend classes, and on the other hand, there are our adherents, our friends, our closed ones, our families. They are scattered around the world, and then you get addressed with the question, with a request to arrive. You get a permit for temporary leave, and the Ukrainians, they get a permit to use for example, Catholic cathedral, as it happened in Ravenna, Italy, or the University Cathedral, as it happened in Lithuania. So it's a process of a gathering of temporary communities on one hand, but then they establish the connections among each other. For example, I had an experience of meeting children school children from different grades, I mean Ukrainian children, or meeting with the families, the mothers and the grandmothers, for whom we organized a small camp for rehabilitation. Because in the same way, our people who are now in Europe or other countries, they require certain rehabilitation because the level of tension is pretty high. You come there and you feel it, you set the connections with the Ukrainians who are there all around the world and those who stay in Ukraine. And this is something that we have to overcome, this feeling of guilt that people have for staying in a safer place. But we say that we're happy that you stay in a safer place, that you're more secure. It's easier for us when we can make sure that children can go to school, our children and women are protected. So it's communication in different formats with different communities. And this is what's needed. This is what the Ukrainians want, those who are scattered all around the world. And this is what Church tries to do in cooperation with civil organizations, with media. By the way, Lithuanian Broadcasting Company, it has a Ukrainian button in their website. They have a program in the Lithuanian radio in Ukrainian language for Ukrainians who currently stay in Lithuania. So these forms of cooperation, they are developing. So if we have questions on the floor, please go ahead. Irina Kožihar, Ukrinform. Recently, Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church announced transition to the new church calendar. Do you also plan such an announcement about such a transition? And if so, will it happen this year? And another question, if we observe the increase of the transition of adherents from Moscow Patriarchate to Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and if so, what are the regions this process is more intense in? Yeah, Ukraine, starting from the first question, Ukrainian Orthodox Church started from the beginning of this year, and you probably know that the parishes who wanted to fulfill such transition, they already had services. For example, us in the Sophia of Kyiv temple, we did the service on both 25th of December and on the 7th of January, so we were celebrating from 25th through 7th. And then there was a synod of Ukrainian Orthodox Church who allowed those parishes who want to transition to the new calendar to submit their request to the Orthodox Church, and in the May next year there will be a cathedral, the gathering, which will consider the issue of transition to new calendar. It's either we will stay with the Julian calendar, or some separate parishes will want to transition to new calendar. So the transition, I would say, is already in progress. There was a meeting between Sviatoslav Shevchuk, the head of Catholic Church, with the priest Epiphany, and they discussed this transition. So we move in parallel ways, so to say. But if Greek Catholics are about 10%, so this is the number given by sociologists, so other 60% are Orthodox, and again we have this problem of Moscow Patriarchate, which will be always against, just like a fairy tale character. So we will solve this issue in a way to unite our community and account all the opinions, both of a minority and majority and of the society. So this should be the matter taken care of not only by the religious communities but of the government as well, because part of the church holidays are now public holidays. So our people's deputies or cabinet of ministers will have to come to an agreement whether there will be a part of Protestants and Greek Catholics and Orthodox will transition to the new calendar. It will not only be about the Christmas under Julian calendar, but it's about the day of baptizing and Christmas as the public holiday, as the day off. So there is a need for certain government commissions to discuss those questions, and I think that those questions should also be asked from the government agencies responsible for this. As to the transitions, from the beginning of the war there are turbulent processes going on in Moscow Patriarchate, and the management of the Moscow Patriarchate demonstrate not very adequate reaction to the events and something that is required by the priests of the church. So it provokes the processes of leaving the Moscow Patriarchate. This process is on, but it was suspended after the May previous year when the Ukrainian Church of Moscow Patriarchate cut their ties with Moscow itself, but there was no official decision about that. But in autumn, when the Ukrainian armed forces started liberating our territories, and there were cases of collaborationist activities identified, and the representatives of Moscow Patriarchate were sitting in Kremlin during this fake process of unification of Ukrainian territories with Russia, when Moscow Patriarchate in fact occupied a part of parishes, and which caused no reaction. So both in society and in the church, within the church itself, there were processes which required certain explanations, and those explanations were not satisfactory. So there were NSDC sanctions imposed on them. There are relevant draft laws in submitted to Verkhovna Rada, and there were searches by the security service of Ukraine. All of this requires some explanations, but I don't know how long should we wait, how long should we keep asking. The process of parishes transition is on, it's gradual, it's so to say steady. I cannot say that it's happening in mass, but the internal potential of Moscow Patriarchate is aimed at preserving their administrative unity and to describe the external world, including Ukrainian society and government, as hostile institutions hostile to them, and it poses threat to national security, unfortunately, and unfortunately it complements to or contributes to Russian propaganda. That there was a letter to United Nations. We have more questions.
Hello, my name is Ramushena. I'm from Newsweek Romania. You mentioned Romania. Do you have any cooperation with the Romanian Orthodox Church regarding Ukrainian refugees in Romania? And my second question is, do you know some cases of Ukrainian priests who are related with the Moscow Patriarchate who condemned the Kirill statements in favor of Russian invasion? Are there such kind of cases, or maybe priests that decided to leave the Russian Orthodox Church and join to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church?
As to Romania, Romania is a country where the majority of the citizens are Orthodox citizens, and we appreciate all the help provided by the Romanian society and Romanian government, all the help which is provided to Ukrainian refugees. My friends were visiting temples in Romania, and they were feeling support from Romanian church and other my friends, I think in Germany, they were visiting the temples, the churches of Romanian parish. They were feeling support from Romanian church. And as to the situation with Moscow Patriarchate, we were hearing different statements which were surprising. If there will be further pressure on Moscow Patriarchate and their canonical status will not be accepted, they will ask for canonical refuge in the Moscow Patriarchate Church. We haven't heard any statements from Romanian Church, for example, in this regard, but there are certain movements of the adherents of Romanian Church of a fundamentalist nature who have connection with Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine. How it will develop, we will see. I did not study this situation very profoundly, but I know that in principle this issue is actual and it requires official relations between the Romanian Church, and it requires some official statements from Romanian Church. Oh, just a second, we will have a specification.
I have to say that the Romanian Orthodox Church in Bucharest, made some statements against the statements of Kirill, of the Patriarch from Moscow. And I wonder if there are Ukrainian priests who were members of the Russian church and they condemned Kirill statements. If you know some cases, if you know some examples.
Ага. Так, ми знаємо про заяви.
Yes, we know about the official statements of Romanian Church about their condemnation of Russian aggression. I was meaning a little bit different situation right now. As to the priests of Moscow Patriarchate in Ukraine who condemned the aggression and the statements of Patriarch Kirill, yes, there was a letter signed by more than 400 priests of East Patriarchate to the Universal Patriarch with a requirement to condemn Russian world as heresy and to judge Moscow Patriarch for his support of the war. And in the same way, there are permanent statements from heard from number of priests. We know that the vast majority of churches, of parishes in Ukraine, they don't mention the Moscow Patriarch, and they require their priests, the parishes, the adherents, require their churches to cut the ties with Moscow Patriarch and to condemn the Moscow Patriarch. But they don't do it on a higher level, but there are statements of condemnation of Moscow Patriarchate, and we greet it and we agree with it. Well, let's wrap up with this. Heorhii Kovalenko, the priest of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, Rector of the Open Orthodox University of St. Sophia the Wisdom. Father, thank you for this conversation. We invite the journalists to follow our announcements. Our next briefing is at 14:30. The Minister of Culture and Information will present the national ecosystem for studying and testing the level of English language. Bear with us and stay with Ukraine.